we have a few questions that we want to take a shot at answering.
These are more questions from our Family Discipleship Week that we had, and we had a forum. And these were some questions that weren't able to be answered. And Ryan and I have a few that we're going to take a shot at. Do you want to introduce yourself? We did that with Joe and Tracy.
Yeah. I'm Ryan. I am the pastor of Preaching and Vision at Redeemer. Kindall and I have had a lot of time and care and energy given to Redeemer over the last 4 years before we planted and all that. And so these conversations about questions our people are asking are really meaningful and important to us.
Yep. We've been married almost 12 years. And we have 4 kids, 8, 7, 5, and 2. 3 boys and 1 girl. And they are all awesome. They are all crazy and they are all awesome. So here's our first question. How do you identify and cultivate your children's individual personalities and gifts for the kingdom? Especially when, as a parent with young children, we are trying to survive and can't always be super intentional. That's a mouthful.
Yeah, keyword there, survive.
Yeah. So how do we in our household, I guess, identify and cultivate our kids' individual personalities and shoot them in a trajectory toward the kingdom of God?
I think you're better at that than I am. You're better at acknowledging that and pointing that out in them. And so I think it's helpful to know how to identify their personalities and gifts, but also knowing how to give them space to be themselves. I think personally, knowing other people comes a lot from knowing yourself really well. And so being able to not, I guess, impose yourself into others. Like, assume that my kids are just going to be like me.
Yeah, that's easy to do as a parent.
Yeah. And so knowing how I am, but also giving our kids the freedom to not be us. This thing makes me afraid, but it doesn't make them afraid. Or this is no big deal to me, but you're really freaking out about that, and not making them feel shame. So there's some things that really can just come naturally from knowing yourself well, and giving yourself the freedom to be an individual, and just having that flexibility to give other people permission to be individuals, be curious about who your kids are. But how do you, I don't know that there's necessarily been a moment where you're like, oh, okay, I figured Simon out.
No, and I don't assume that will ever happen. I have an idea of how to answer this question, but our oldest kid is only 8, so we got a long way to go.
And their personalities are still forming, their gifts are still forming.
Yep. In our parenting world, it's we're just scratching the surface. So I think that I always want to give the caveat that whatever I say, I get to come back next time and scratch it all. It can change all tomorrow. But I think that as our kids are getting a little bit older, it is easier with Simon, who's 8, to see, like you said, his personality more.
Yeah.
And see his strengths more, and then be able to call that out and say, hey, you're really good at this. Simon is a very good leader. He is our first kid, type A. He will lead a crowd. But how do I help him lead people toward goodness and not just craziness?
Yep.
And And how do I call out that leader tendency, which I think that you have a lot of being a good leader, and saying someday you could be pastoring a church like Dad, or you could be leading a business. He has his own business.
Yeah.
He's 8 years old and he goes up and down the street mowing lawns, and he's really good at being independent.
Mm-hmm.
So how do I help him use that independence for the good of others, not just himself? Because that can be isolating for him. So there's different things for the different kids, and it's coming out more with, one of our kids is very, I would say, empathetic, emotional.
Mm-hmm.
So how do I help them be empathetic towards others and not just hyper emotional? I think that a lot of that is just conversations with them. It is
Paying attention.
Knowing there is so much survival in parenting, but knowing as your kid gets older, what are they? My kid's throwing a tantrum about this. Well, they're really passionate about trucks right now. So how can I help them learn more about trucks? That sounds silly, but that is a real thing that you can start whenever they're little, and then they move away from trucks, and then they're more interested in reading or whatever it is, their extracurriculars, and how can they use those things to not just be good at something or self-serving, but always having conversations with them about, this is a gift that the Lord has given you. Being a good leader is a gift that the Lord has given you. And we're always turning that back over to Him and saying, we're fighting for the kingdom.
Yeah, and along with paying attention, giving them a voice for what they care about, so that they know at least they're heard, and then in a lot of times they can live out from those cares. And so being able to, hear Simon, he didn't come to us and articulate, Mom, Dad, I would like to start a business and I would like to mow lawns. I know I've never done this before. He just started asking, can I do this? Can I go with my friend to do this? Yeah. And it was through, I think, mostly you paying attention, but also us realizing, oh, he cares about working.
Yeah. He's a really hard worker.
And that is a way that he has been designed, is just to work and do that well. And so giving him a voice to say, hey, I care about this.
Yeah.
And we know that he cares about it because he has consequences that involve those things, and it actually matters a lot to him. So I think I want to give permission, though, to parents to just survive. I think a lot of times, especially with young kids, toddlers all the way up into early elementary, we feel guilty for just surviving. And I think there's not a lot you can do more in a season like that than survive and do the very little things of even just paying attention and giving them space to care about what they care about.
Yeah. And I would say from our 8-year-old to our 2-year-old, we've, even in those short 6 years, we've learned a lot.
Yeah.
And we've changed our parenting a lot from Simon to Micah.
Mm-hmm.
And I would even say what I would be frustrated with Simon as a 2-year-old is not really that big of a deal with Micah as a 2-year-old. So did we answer this question?
Well, yes, I think so. And I think the very last thought I have is understand that your kids are learning about themselves too. And so they're going to seem like an enigma. They're just not going to make a lot of sense. And so it is our job to help them make sense of themselves. And so it just requires a lot of patience and a lot of being curious together. letting them make mistakes.
Yeah.
And allowing yourself to make mistakes.
Yeah. It's good.
Which is the answer to, I think, probably a lot of my questions.
That's good.
Fail well.
I think we even talked about that whenever we were talking with Joe and Tracy about the survival aspect.
Yeah.
And I think that there is, I want to say, a holiness for the mundane and the providing a safe space for your kid to throw a temper tantrum.
Yeah.
A safe space for them to, they're brand new into this world. They don't know anything. And we have to give them that space to
grow. As much as we feel like we're learning parenting, kids are learning so much more about just how to be human.
Yeah.
Next question is, how do you foster enjoyment and positivity in your home when you are tired and your kids are grouchy? It's only the kids that are ever grouchy. We are not.
I'm never grouchy.
But there's a theme here. How do we enjoy our life together when we're just surviving? Right?
I think a couple of years ago, I don't know where it came from. Maybe a podcast of something I was listening to, but someone had told us this. Maybe you remember, I don't know. To enjoy your kids.
Yeah.
Which sounds so basic. It's not something I really thought of because I'm thinking I need to be the parent. I need to set boundaries. I need to have consequences, and we have to have rules. We have to this. I never thought I get to enjoy my kids. And I don't think that I need to be their friend right now, but I can really enjoy them. We can laugh a lot. And how do we foster that in our home, though? I think it starts with that light bulb saying, oh, I can enjoy my kids.
That's part of my job.
Yeah.
Is to enjoy my children.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially, when I have a job that's very in my head, I spend the vast majority, I would say well over 90% of my job thinking and talking. So I actually need to go wrestle with the boys more than I do. I'm historically, I have been a very mostly serious person, kind of gray and flat.
I'm working on
it in my personality. And so I think even giving permission for my kids to lead me in like being a fun dad. That's probably one area where I feel a little bit of insecurity, is that I feel like I'm a pretty boring dad. And my idea of fun is working in the garden and doing things like that. And
even to that, like the Lord has given us these 4 kids.
Yeah. And
he's no dummy. He knew which home that they would be in, and he knew which parents they would have.
Yeah.
And I have to remind myself that I am the right parent for my kids. I don't have to be in charge of anyone else's. These are the 4, and that's enough.
Yeah.
And those are, I think that in having that light bulb turn on and realizing I get to enjoy my kids, it is a lot of meeting them where they are. Yeah. Even if it's something that I'm not interested in, I don't care to play dolls. I don't care to make bracelets. I don't care to jump on the trampoline, but like laying myself aside and joining them.
Yeah, I think that was one thing that I've learned is my kids will lead the fun. We just have to let them and just say yes. From our experience, I think a lot of times our kids are grouchy because we're shutting down their fun a lot of times.
It's good.
And so just saying yes, or even going back to the other question of paying attention to them. What do they enjoy? What do they care about? And engaging with them in those things. So Yesterday, as crazy of a day as it was, I took a nap. I
Sounds
rarely
nice.
take naps, but I took a nap. Simon was on the couch, and he sat there on the couch waiting for me to be done taking my nap. In the very second I started to move, he said, "Dad, will you play a game with me?" And I was like, "Oh man, I'm so tired." And I told him no at first and gave it a couple minutes. And then he said, "Dad, will you play Uno with me?" And we ended up, we played a different game, but I was like, you know what? I tell him no a lot.
Yeah.
I need to say yes. And I did. I mean, he learned a new game and he was like, "Whoa, that was really fun."
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoyed it. We didn't get to play very much of it, but
And I think that that's what I'm learning even now, to say yes a lot more and not say yes to
be their friend or
not even that, not saying yes to more candy, more stuff.
yeah.
But if it's a time commitment, if it's playing a game or staying up late to do something, that will, I'm working towards that being a yes. And
Yeah.
anytime my kid brings me a book and says, "Mom, will you read this to me?" Even if it's 9:30 at night,
Oh,
which is hard, I really don't ever turn down reading a book with them.
so as they've gotten older, I don't know how everyone else's experience is, but as our kids have gotten older, they include us more. So Simon will now say, instead of, "Dad, can we go play blah, blah, blah?" Kind of just thinking like this is for him. You know, I want to go play on the trampoline. I want to go play in the sprinkler. He will say, "Dad, will you with me? Will you play catch with me? Will you play a game with me?" I don't know if he's just figured out that that's how you get mom and dad, or if his desire has really changed to where fun is now with us.
Yeah.
And I would say, alongside of this, you also have to teach them, because they just want more and more and more and more and more.
Yeah.
So in order to really enjoy the fun, there's got to be boundaries to it. And that's probably one of the harder things, is using your no well,
Mm-hmm.
and they're just not going to get
Yeah.
it.
How many times have our kids come to us and said, "I know you're going to say no.
Yeah.
I know you're going to say
Yeah.
no, but I'm going to try to ask this anyway." That kind of breaks my heart.
Yeah.
We just very practically, it's harder whenever you have more and more kids to have individual time with them. So something that we've implemented is every month every kid gets one date night a month with us, and they get to stay up late and we play games.
Yeah. It's even just like an hour past bedtime.
We'll play a game. It's just them.
Yeah.
We'll watch a silly YouTube video, whatever. It's really up to them. We have good conversations in those evenings as well.
Mm-hmm.
But they always look forward to that every month, and they hold us to it.
Yep. The month is a lot shorter for us.
Yeah. So they're all 3 right now, 3 nights a month where it's devoted to the kids on their birth date. They get to have that date night. And I think that is one way that in our home we foster that fun time, because
they set the agenda for that too.
Yeah, that's us staying up late. That's them getting to choose what we do. And it's good.
Yep. And that came from you having that moment of saying, I want to be more intentional with making time for our kids to know we enjoy them.
Mm-hmm.
So that wasn't just something that was natural. Like, this stuff doesn't just ooze out of us.
Yeah.
We've had to have epiphanies and be diligent.
It's good.
Read that next question.
Oh, here's a doozy. Can you speak about being humble and accepting correction from other parents? And when other parents correct your child, do you think there is time and place for that?
I have a really short answer.
Let's go.
I don't know.
All right, moving on.
Yeah, I think being humble is the really important thing there. I think you always should listen, especially if that person is a part of your faith community, part of your church family. They know you, they know the Lord, they trust the Lord. They pray, someone who is filled with the Holy Spirit. Anytime you are corrected by someone with the Holy Spirit, you should pause and listen. It doesn't matter if it's parenting or marriage or just as an individual. I think you need to take that and say thank you and pray.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I think there is a time and a place for that. Now, depending on how that gets brought to you is not up to you. So there may be times where you really don't want to say thank you for that and move on. But I would say the humility there is not in necessarily submitting to that person, but in submitting to the Lord and the Spirit and that is active in them.
Yeah, I think it's hard whenever you're teaching your kids to respect adults, but then also be wary of some adults. So they don't know where that line is.
Mhm.
And it's just hard to know, hey, this person is someone that we love and trust. You need to listen to them.
Yeah.
Talking to our kids.
Yeah.
And this person is like, well, we can just kind of move past that and we don't have to really take on what they said. That's a hard line to find as a kid.
Well, one thing we've said, if someone corrects our kid, and we're there, then we'll follow up with them. We'll go to our child and we'll say, hey, yeah, they were right. You need to listen to them when they say this. If we're not there, like somebody's babysitting or they're at a friend's house or something like that, then we kind of have this rule of, like if we're at someone else's house, we carry our family rules, but we also give way to that family's rules. And so it's almost a little bit like if we say something's okay that this family doesn't, then we'll give to them and we'll follow their rule. If they say something's okay and we don't, then we carry our family rules with us. And it kind of, we've used that as a way to say, hey, just like you carry your last name with you everywhere you go, you carry the values of our family and the things that we've taught you. And they're either going to fail, they're going to forget, or they're going to overtly disobey. And so you just have to be willing to correct them in those times. Now, when somebody else corrects them and we disagree.
I've definitely had that situation before where, we've seen both ways where another adult corrects one of our kids and I'm like, thank you. I need other adults loving my kid enough to not let them be insane.
Yeah.
But then there are some adults where I'm like, okay, that was a little much.
Yeah.
So we're pretty, we don't do a lot. Our life is homeschooled and at the church building. So our kids are around a lot of adults who we trust and who love them and will not too badly steer them in a way that we wouldn't prefer.
Well, and when there's something that maybe one family rule that we have contradicts what another adult is saying, we try to encourage our kids to come talk to us. Like, hey, just if you're feeling confused, or this person said this and they're not my parent, I don't know what to do, just come talk to us if you can. That's a hard one because it feels very situational too.
I think that humble aspect though is always remembering that as a parent, I definitely don't have it figured out.
Yeah.
And I need help. My kid needs help being corrected and directed. I need help seeing that as well.
Yeah.
And that humility is even admitting, oh, right, I didn't see that. That that is a lot of self-work that doesn't really have a lot to do with parenting. It's just Jesus help us.
If someone wants to correct us in our parenting, and maybe they're not someone who is a believer, or maybe they don't have kids, and so their ability to see very clearly our side and our perspective, we want to listen still and take what they're saying. And this isn't like a one size fits all. It's not going to have, like, there's going to be moments where it's imperative that you make a decision, and they may be the best person that you have. But if someone who doesn't fit those qualifications that we mentioned earlier wants to offer advice or correct, that humility part is still really important. I think receive it with gentleness, and then go talk to someone who you trust, someone who is filled with the Spirit, who is a parent, and say, hey, this person brought this up to me, or you don't even have to say who it is. Somebody brought this up to me. Do you agree? Do you think that I parent in this way and I need to change or whatever? The humility part of that is really important, but that we can overdo that, feeling shame in our parenting and feeling like we need other people to tell us how to parent. And that's where really submitting to the Lord and praying.
That's hard.
And trusting that, like you said, you are the parent that God gave your children. That's where that comes into play. All right, last question for us. How do you discern as parents when it's appropriate to discipline or correct your child, or when to have grace for them in the moment? So, how do you know when to lay the hammer and when to just give them a hug or let them walk away?
Yep.
Great question.
Do we know?
Does anyone out there have this answer? Yeah. What do you think?
I think in our house, it is very dependent upon the kid. And like I've mentioned before, it's different. We've learned a lot from our eldest to our youngest. And there's a lot of things that, for lack of a better word, my 2-year-old now gets away with that whenever my eldest was 2, he didn't get away with.
Yeah.
And that carries a lot of shame for us because we, with your first kid, they are kind of a guinea pig, and that is hard on the parents and that's hard on the kid.
Yeah. We're baby parents.
And what am I saying?
You will make a mistake.
Yeah. But praying that you have grace for yourself and that your kid grows up and forgives you and has grace for you as well.
Yeah.
And doesn't completely hold that against you. We are always saving up for our kids' therapy fund. And
yeah, they don't know that's what their savings accounts are for.
Forget college. You're just going to therapy.
They think they're getting a car.
Yeah. Nope. Just
Mental
learning how
health.
to deal with your parents.
Yeah, that's good. That when I first read this, I immediately thought fail. When you take the pressure off of yourself to be able to fail and make a mistake and let your kids make mistakes, then it's not that you make fewer mistakes, then you just learn from them quicker. It's easier because you don't feel like you've got a chokehold on what you're trying to do. I also think that it's there's a false dichotomy here. I think we can easily think that discipline and correction is graceless, and it's not. I think discipline and correction is grace and can be very gracious.
It can and it is, but you can't go the other way to heavy-handedness.
Right. Yeah.
And what I mean by it depends on the kid is we have a couple of kids where we have to be more direct with our consequences. And we're a spanking household. We spank our kids.
Yeah, we can outline our formula for that. It's we don't walk around with a paddle.
Yeah.
But it's rare.
Yeah. I don't It's not ever something I enjoy, but it is something that happens. And I have one kid where I can look at them sideways, and that's enough. That's enough of a correction for them.
Mm-hmm.
And there's times where we just send kids to their bed or whatever. I think that as they are getting older, that discipline and correction has definitely evolved,
Mm-hmm.
and it becomes taking things away. But with my 2-year-old, if he's going to hit or bite or whatever, that is an immediate slap on the hand, really. Am I allowed to say that on a podcast? I don't know. But if he's going to throw himself on the floor and throw a tantrum, that's something I'm going to ignore.
Which there we see our evolution too, because I think in the past we thought that was a spanking infraction.
Yeah.
And we've realized no.
And this is a somewhat difficult question, because it is so dependent on your household.
Yeah.
And dependent on your own kid.
Yeah.
It is constantly evolving when we correct and redirect versus a harsh discipline correction.
Yeah. Well, and I think we are the kind of parents where it probably comes easier and more natural for us to address something that they've done than it is to let it go. And
we have a lot of conversations.
Let them have this one.
We are always reviewing our day, going back and seeing, we have those conversations of, what was your best part of today? What was your worst part of today? What are you grateful for today? Those are 3 questions that we ask our kids nearly every night. And we have conversations, and there's a lot of times where they will say, my worst part of today was when I got in trouble for this or whatever.
Or they'll just say, you.
And we get to talk about that. And we want our home to be, everything's on the table. We get to talk about everything. Mom and dad are not afraid of you. Mom and dad are not afraid of a topic. We can have the hard conversations. You can tell me that you're mad at me. You can tell me that you hate me. I'm going to love you no matter what. I'm not going to shy away from you. Like, this is our house, and this is safe. Yeah. So
I feel like this question needs to be in deep conversation. So if this is a question you really feel like, oh man, I need to answer to that, I want to say, go find someone who's parenting you admire and ask them to sit down and have this conversation with you, because while there is grace in correction and discipline, it's so, I'm going to use an overused word. It's so nuanced, not only to the people involved, the kids, the parents, but also to each situation, and also to you want to have grace in everything.
Sure.
You do, but how do you know when to address something or let it go? Yeah. And that's going to change. That's going to change within the same infraction too.
And like you said, finding someone that you trust, who loves Jesus, who loves you and your family enough. That I have an older lady mentor that I get to talk to every couple of weeks. And a lot of our talking is about kids.
Yeah.
And there's things that she'll say, like, have you tried this? Have you done this? And I'm like, why is that so simple?
Why didn't Google tell me that?
Yeah, it sounds, but whenever you're in the thick of it and you don't know what to do,
it's hard to think.
You cannot think straight. And that is part of the survival. So yes, find that person who can see what you can't see and trust them enough to implement what they're telling you. Something as simple as, our kids have pieces of paper every week, and they get check marks or an X mark depending on what kind of blow-ups they have. And that has been a better system for us than spanking ever has been.
For sure. And that, I think that what that helps them with is it gives them a bigger picture of their behavior and how their behavior has impacted their week.
Yep.
And they're not living moment by moment, but they see it in light of the whole.
And that sounds so simple, but
Yeah.
I could not come up with that on my own.
Well, and there's a time to let go of it too. Like we've had that discussion with them. Like we're not always going to have this
Yeah.
checkmark system because you're going to need to learn to obey from love.
And that might seem harsh to some people, like giving your kid a check or an X. That might seem harsh.
Everyone's
Give them
going
a
to do
red
it
light or a
different.
green light. I don't know what your vibe
or
is.
an M&M.
A happy face and a sad face, whatever. But it has been good for our kids to see. And whenever they get like an X, I usually write down, well, you were yelling at mom about something, or you weren't sharing, or whatever. And I try to remind them, hey, this is the situation that happened that led to this, and let's try to do better next time.
And it does take a decent amount for them to get an X. We give them a lot of second chances before we do that. Yep. So, okay. Well, this was a good conversation. I think you're a really great mom.
Thanks.
And I think a huge part of our kids being so awesome is because of the way you love them. So thank you for that.
I will encourage you
another time. Yep. That's all we have. Bye. Signing off.